Alrighty, good morning, everyone. My name is David Dugard. I'm an admissions coordinator at FIU, and we are joined with the illustrious, amazing, and beautiful Victoria Gray from the College of Social Work at FIU.
Good morning, everyone. I've never had an intro like that. David, thank you so much.
So today, our session is going to be about burnout and COVID-19. Why is it here? Is there a cure? Do we hate it or do we love it? Most likely we hate it, but we're going to figure it out. We want this to be as interactive as possible. Obviously, this is a webinar, so if you guys do have questions, please feel free to put them in the Q&A or comments. You also have the raise hand feature. So you can definitely raise your hand if you agree with something, or if you have a question. If you want to unmute yourself, that's also fine. I personally do not mind getting interrupted, but probably for the flow of things, it would be best if you want to speak on the speaker to wait till the end until there's a time during our presentation for it. As always, this is a safe space. Your bosses may be on here, your coworkers or whatever, but we are talking about sensitive subjects. So please keep an open mind. Try not to be judgmental or anything. And anything that you tell us will stay with us, except obviously it's recorded. And anything you type in the chat will be posted. But besides that, you're good. Alrighty, so what is burnout? Also, I have included beautiful memes and pictures to illustrate what I'm saying because facts are facts. So burnout is essentially extreme exhaustion. It could be mental, it could be physical, it could be emotional. It's usually due to prolonged stress in any way, shape, or form. Many people get burned out throughout any modality of jobs, but particularly in the world of enrollment services, and especially with COVID, burnout is on the rise. Work-life balance is messed up. You're realizing you're working from home and you're trying to give a meeting, but your dogs are barking and your kid is crying and oh my gosh, you forgot the laundry last night, so you're gonna do it now, but then you have a meeting. A lot is going on. So that's what we're here to talk about. My goal for this was to give everyone realistic and real things you can do besides the normal thing that anytime someone's like, oh, you're burnt out, go take a bubble bath. That's fine. Bubble baths are great if you like them. One, not everyone likes a bath. That was an entire discussion in my office. And two, we want to give you something that you can do right before a meeting, or if you just had a parent that was very aggressive with you, or something that you can actually use in your everyday life. So are you burnt out? Are your students burnt out? So we have Zoom fatigue, where you're constantly on Zoom from meeting to meeting. You're probably not moving around like you used to. Are you tired from working at home? I personally, it was a love-hate relationship. I loved waking up right before I had to start work and just going onto the computer. But I also hated that I was in bed and I was always tired, so I would just want to nap. Are you not wanting to go back to the office? Many universities are transitioning back to office work. We are at FIU are fully back in the office for admissions. So is that an adjustment period for you? Are you worried about too many things? Obviously, your work, COVID, your health, safety, kids, school, all that stuff. And then what's on your radar? When I was at home, I was thinking about all the stuff I had to do at home. Oh my gosh, the dishes aren't done. There's laundry to do, but I'm in a meeting, but the meeting's boring, so I want to do all that stuff. It's things like that and having to balance that out. And because there's no decompression period between driving to work and driving home, it was, oh, okay, I have to use the restroom. Let me answer an email while I'm on the toilet and let me do this. It was never a break, which we really need to set those proper boundaries.
So one of the things that David and I really wanted to make sure was that we were keeping it real here. We recognize that whether or not you're checking out this particular section of the conference because you acknowledge that you have been burned out, you are burned out, or maybe you're just checking it out because you want to support your colleagues who you feel might really be struggling with burnout. What we really want to just affirm here is that Burnout can happen to anybody. Burnout does not discriminate. It happens to all ages, all genders, all races, all cultures. There is no one defining personality trait or feature that would indicate the likelihood that somebody would be more burned out than somebody else. And so, just in an effort to kind of create a space where if you're feeling this way as we begin to take this burnout self test, we just want to acknowledge that at some point, even if you haven't felt this way, we all are at risk of this. So that may not sound very encouraging, but the hope is that we don't want to pathologize burnout. Instead, what we want to do is we want to have an open discussion around it so that we can kind of find ways for ourselves to navigate it and to support our team in navigating their own burnout. So David and I thought it would be interesting rather than just hearing my voice. And of course, we wish we could hear your voice. Your voice is the most important voice in this entire webinar. But in an attempt to give at least a couple of different voices, we're going to read through these different checklist items to help you determine whether or not you're experiencing burnout. And so what we would like to encourage you to do is maybe grab a piece of paper next to you and just begin to like check off, yes, I'm experiencing this as we read through this list, or raise your hand. Here we are, we're in the space together. Like we can raise our hand. Yeah, I feel this way now, or I have felt this way. Or feel free just to kind of note this in your mind as we move through each of these items. Either way, this is really just for you to get a read on maybe where you're at in your own understanding of burnout. So I'll read the first one. I feel run down and drained of physical or emotional energy. Is that you? Yep, we're seeing your hands raised.
Beautiful. Congratulations. I have negative thoughts about my job.
Mhm. I am harder and less sympathetic with people than perhaps they deserve.
I am easily irritated by small problems or my coworkers and team.
So appreciate the honesty. I feel misunderstood or unappreciated by my coworkers.
I feel that I have no one to talk to. You can talk to us. That's why we're here.
I feel that I'm achieving less than I should.
I feel that under an unpleasant level of pressure to succeed.
I feel I am not getting out of my job what I would want.
I feel that I am in the wrong organization or the wrong profession.
I am frustrated with parts of my job.
That one is very popular. I feel that organizational politics or bureaucracy frustrate my ability to do a good job.
I feel that there is more work to do than I practically have the ability to do. Can we raise both hands?
Yes, you can. I feel that I do not have time to do many of the things that are important to doing a good quality job.
And lastly, I find that I do not have time to plan as much as I would like. Thank you. Thank you for taking this test with us and for being honest and for acknowledging what you see is not something that you're experiencing in isolation. This is something that we are experiencing together. Although the problem with burnout is we oftentimes don't talk about it with one another in a way that's helpful. There's this kind of expectation along with burnout that we should be ashamed to feel this way about our job or to not have the same level of enthusiasm or stamina or energy. And we just want to dispel all of that. We understand that there is healthy guilt, but that is not guilt that's going to serve you well. In fact, what we want to say here is that if you identified yes to any of those statements, it means you're normal. It also means that for many of us, we have been under one of the most stressful years collectively than we could have ever recalled before. And for some of you, maybe even personally, maybe you went through things this year that your coworkers, your students don't know about, your department, your supervisors. On top of just this global pandemic, you experienced personal things, and all of these things kind of chipping away at your ability to stay as engaged in the work as you would like. And so if you answered yes to even one of those items, then that indicates that you are at risk for burnout. And not only did you answer yes, but how long have you been feeling this way? Have you been feeling this way for 5 years? Have you been feeling this way since the lockdown happened with COVID a little over a year ago? Or has it been for you a matter of months? And we really want you to kind of gauge how many of these items did you identify yes with? And also, how long have you been experiencing these symptoms? What we know is that burnout reduces productivity, it saps you of your energy, it leaves you feeling increasingly helpless, sometimes hopeless, cynical, and even resentful. And maybe you feel like you have nothing left to give. We know that the negative effects of burnout certainly spill over into other areas of our lives. We're no longer able to contain our helplessness, maybe even some of our lack of enthusiasm for life now is carried over into other areas of our life and our relationships with our families. The way that we used to enjoy activities, we're no longer enjoying them, or maybe we don't even have the opportunity to enjoy activities yet, depending on the communities that you live in and how open and safe it is for you. When we deal with individuals who experience burnout, the common thread is the sense of exhaustion. They're just tired all the time. And there's also this feeling that nothing that I do is appreciated. Tasks either feel completely mind numbing, I just do the same thing over and over and over again, or the tasks seem overwhelming. And there's very little in between. So I'm either overwhelmed or I'm kind of bored and checked out. David, if you'll advance the slide for me.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. You'll notice here that, we've put up just an image that is probably familiar to most, if not all of us on this call, which is a gas tank, right? This helps us to understand whether or not our tank is full or whether our tank is empty. And if our tank is running on empty, then we're not going anywhere. And we wanted to put this image up for you more anecdotally. So rather than that burnout checklist that you just answered, this is a really good visual that you can use at any time of the day. You can do this right now. You can look at this gas tank and you can say, if I'm really honest, how am I doing with energy? How am I doing with the ability to stay engaged in my work? And be honest about this. Are you full? Good for you. Then maybe you can kind of come and join David and I and help us as well. Because for a lot of us, we find ourselves somewhere between the half full and the below halfway mark. So either empty to full. And the way that a lot of us stay there is by regular self-care, like David said earlier. He had mentioned bubble baths work for some people, but not for everybody. That's not what we're talking about in this webinar. Okay, what we're talking about is still do your self-care techniques. Those are super important. It's what's going to help you kind of keep this gas tank, if you will, regulated. But if you're showing up to work and all you're doing, if you have already identified that you're burned out, is doing these every so often self-care moments or days for yourself, it's not enough to refuel. It's not enough to re-energize or refill this tank. And what we know is you are going into work, whether going in means going into the next room of the home, or it means that physically going to a space like David and I are. We know that you are spending a lot of your fuel and energy, even more so when you're experiencing burnout, because it takes that much more energy to be able to engage in tasks that you engaged in before. So what are we going to do? We're going to talk about the 3R approach. We're going to recognize, which many of you maybe have just done. You've realized, wow, I checked off about 8 of those burnout moments. And I realized that I've been running on empty for a long time. Okay, well, good for you. You've already completed the first R in the R approach, which is you recognize where you're at. The next is to reverse the impact of burnout in our lives. And there are things that we can do to reverse the impact and to also achieve positivity and meaning in work again. And then the third R is resilience. So how can we bounce back better from this period? Just because we're experiencing burnout now does not mean that we have to remain burned out for the rest of our professional careers. So take a deep sigh. There's good news in that. So no matter how depleted you feel, the good news is that during this time and during this talk, you're going to learn ways to be able to replenish, reverse the effects of burnout, and to create some helpful resiliency tools moving forward. Because we know that work isn't going to necessarily become easier, or things at work might not change for you. So the change has to happen here. It has to happen within us. So how do we restore ourselves? Now, David and I were talking earlier about this. Maybe many of you are really interested in research. And so what we want you to do is do a little bit of research here on your own after this, and specifically look up the work of Christina Maslach, Maslach. She has been involved in this burnout work for a very long time, as well as several of her collaborators. They've done extensive research. And what they discovered, and the reason that burnout is different than stress, than compassion fatigue, is that burnout has 3 specific components related to it. And those 3 components are exhaustion, cynicism, and inefficacy. And we're going to talk about those just for a minute, okay? And maybe you've heard of these. How many of you are feeling exhausted? Just put your hand up again, like, yeah. How many of you are feeling exhausted? Okay. Well, exhaustion doesn't only mean physically exhausted, although a lot of times that's how it manifests. It manifests in the physical, right? You wake up in the morning, even if you've had a full night's sleep, and guess what? You're still tired. You don't feel rested, okay? Emotionally and mentally, you're exhausted. You see the phone ring or you see another email notice come in and you're just, I don't want to deal with this anymore. Okay, that's what we're talking about when we're talking about real exhaustion coming from burnout. Cynicism looks like we're disengaged from our work and we're disengaged from others. We're detached. We're negative. So maybe where you started this work and you loved it and you really demonstrated a lot of care towards your students, towards your colleagues and your coworkers, now there's almost a part of you that just doesn't care. And we have to be honest about this. It doesn't make us bad people. It just means we're like throwing up the flag saying, I need help. The workload is too much, the demands are too much, and I need some help learning how to manage this. And then lastly, the inefficacy. What this basically means is over time, we begin to feel that maybe our impact isn't making that much of a difference anymore. Like, am I really helping students? Am I really making a difference here at this college or this university? Right? Maybe I'm not as competent as I thought I was. Maybe I don't really know what I'm doing. And so all of this negative thinking starts to creep in. Okay. So if we know that those are the 3 components of burnout, then you could probably see why taking a mental health day, which is super important, going for a walk alone, or doing a bubble bath, or treating yourself in some way isn't necessarily going to treat the specific components of burnout. What treats the specific components to burnout are these 3 combative ways, which are movement, interpersonal techniques, and training our thoughts. Okay, so what about movement? Now, do you notice that David and I didn't say exercise? No. So for those of you that want to check out because you're like, oh my goodness, if I have to hear one more time about exercise, I can't. We're not talking about exercise. Okay. Why? Because exercise is performative. Exercise is one more thing that we have to do when it feels like work. And when we don't do it, what happens is we feel badly and we kind of slip back into our, see, I can't do anything right. I can't even exercise. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about movement, which is any way that you can engage your body. Now, this thing, I have spent so much time in this thing over the last year, more time than I care to admit. And so we have to get creative sometimes, right? We have to work with the space that we're in. And so for many of us, we're confined to a chair, we're confined to a small space, and we need to use that space to work for us, right? To combat exhaustion, the answer is not more rest, believe it or not. The answer to combat exhaustion from burnout is to move, do chair work. That might sound silly, but many of us are sitting like this, hunched over in our chairs and posturing, literally putting your shoulders back, lifting your head up. I'm demonstrating this for you. It'd be so much more fun if we could all do this together and you could see me. But you know what? Do it. Do it right now with us. Okay. Put your head back, put your arms back, give yourself space. Okay. What we do when we're burned out is we cover our heart because we feel vulnerable. We physically cover. We go for cover and we turn our bodies inward. But posturing and opening it ourselves up into our space is a way to move and is a way to release a different type of answer rather than to protect. The other thing that you can do is you can do chair stretches. See the little image on there? It doesn't have to be anything formal. There are some great apps. If you've got your smartphone nearby, there are free apps that are literally available to you right now to help you to get up or to stretch in your chair or to do chair yoga, chair meditation, chair stretches. If it doesn't work for you, that's fine. But know that it's available to you. I highly recommend the app called Move, M-O-V-E, or the app called Stand Up, or an app called Stretching Exercises. These are all free. And they actually, if you put a little reminder, they will remind you to get up at different points during the day. So get moving. Walking is huge. Bilateral stimulation when we walk. Walk around your office. Walk down the hall. Did you know that a 10-minute walk has been proven to boost your mood for up to 2 hours? So on your lunch break, in between your emails, instead of maybe checking social media or trying to get one more email in, go for a 10-minute walk. You're going to have 2 hours of increased mood if you do. Okay. You'll also notice, have fun. Maybe you don't have a hula hoop in your office, right? But what are some fun ways that you can move? Okay, and I know David's got some great ideas about that he's going to be sharing with you a little bit later on about how we can engage in fun activities. Movement does not have to be work. It can be fun. So infuse fun into your movement. David, I know we have some questions. Are we good? Is there a question?
Yes. A lot of people wanted to know about the researcher you mentioned.
Yes.
So when you get a chance, if you could type it into the question, that would be great.
Beautiful. I'm going to do that. In fact, I'll do that, David, when you take over.
Perfect.
So thank you for that. If there's anything else, just stop me. Okay, it's personal. Okay, so we know we have to get moving to combat the exhaustion. Now, to combat the cynicism about people and about our work, we've got to get personal. And as you notice here, there's a bullseye. And I really encourage you, when you have even 5 minutes, you can do it now if you want, draw a bullseye on a piece of paper. And what I want you to do is I want you to plot different people on that diagram. Okay. Find the people who our who are encouragers, who are not energy zappers. And I'm sorry, we're keeping it real, right? We promised each other we would do that at the start of this. We might have to work with individuals who are very draining, who are pervasively challenging for us, and maybe negative in a way that doesn't align with how we like to think or behave, but we still have to interact with them. However, they do not have to be in the center of our bullseye. Okay. So what I want you to do is I want you to plot people where you believe they exist for you in kind of your interpersonal social map, if you will. This bullseye is like your interpersonal map. Okay. So David is going to be one of my core people because he's positive, he's encouraging, we uplift one another, we laugh a lot, right? We're still stressed, we still have all the work demands, but I know who are my allies, and they're going to be reserved for that yellow spot. Okay, who are the people that I have to keep close to me in the red zone, but that maybe aren't going to necessarily be, my burnout busters. They're going to be more of the individuals that I have to work with, I have to report to. I'm going to have good work relationships with them, but they're not going to be in my main core. And then so on and so on. And just keep that ripple effect going out. And then when you realize that somebody that should be contained maybe in an outer circle has somehow moved into your core, because sometimes it happens, immediately combat that by reaching out to one of your allies. Immediately, you would reach out to David and say, hey, this week I have been inundated. You don't have to name names, right? Because we really want to honor and respect one another, but I've been inundated with somebody who has a very different work style than I do. I feel very drained, very burned out. David, I need to laugh. Let's ally this thing. Let's work through this thing together. And you find these supportive folks and you do it in a way where you have control. Okay, so you're going to enlist your work allies, enlist your friends and your family. Not all family would we want to put in our yellow circle, right? But know who those people are in your family, and then also decide who are the people that you have to keep in your bullseye, but that maybe can't or shouldn't occupy your main attention, that you're not going to call your interpersonal allies. The last thing that you can do or consider here for keeping it personal is connect with a cause or a community group that's personally meaningful for you. Now, I'm going to pause there for a minute because some of you are like, hold on, Vicki, I don't have time. If you saw my schedule, I do not have time for one more group, for one more friend, for one more meeting. Well, when you do this little bullseye and you start to move people where they kind of belong, then all of a sudden you will create a little bit of time for yourself. And it's not only about who is in your life, it's about what they're bringing into your space, right? And so if you only want to do this bullseye for work because you're really experiencing burnout at work, that's perfectly fine. Then develop a little lunch group. Maybe this could be your community group, okay? If I can offer a really quick example, when we moved to, I teach for the School of Social Work here at FIU, and when we moved to fully remote teaching, as all of us did, right? Our jobs went remote. It was not something I was very familiar or comfortable with. And so realizing I needed to gain some allies in this, we created a group for professors who were not accustomed to teaching online. And we met once a week and we supported each other. We shared ideas, we laughed, sometimes we cried because we felt the pressure, but it was a time that we could come together and we could form this community space where we knew the purpose was to add mutual support during a tough time. So that's the type of community group that I'm suggesting. Okay, because as we noticed with those hands raising, we are not alone in this. Okay. And the last one is taming your thoughts. I love this. Okay, this is like where I geek out because I'm a therapist by trade. And so in counseling, one of the most effective therapeutic techniques that we have is called cognitive behavioral therapy. David, you know this well. CBT, cognitive behavior therapy, is a way that we train our thoughts. We move our maladaptive, unhelpful, skewed thinking that's not working for us. We change it in order to create thoughts that do work for us, that help us. Okay, and we're going to talk about what some of these more common cognitive distortions are. And maybe you'll raise your hand and let us know if you've experienced any of these, because these common cognitive distortions also go hand in hand with burnout. Maybe you're somebody who's gotten into a place where you're stuck in polarized thinking, which is black and white thinking, extremes. Either the workday is awful or it's great, it's perfect. Either you handled that presentation brilliantly or it was a failure. There's no in between, right? You've gotten into this place where you're overgeneralizing, and now it's either good or bad, black or white, and there's no room for gray. Or maybe you've created a mental filter without realizing it, and you're focusing only on the negatives. I know I'm not in a good place when that happens. I know that if I'm in an hour-long meeting, and at the end of the meeting, the only thing that I'm focusing on is that one thing that I wish I wouldn't have said versus maybe all the other things that were really valuable, I've gotten into a poor mental filter space where I'm only focusing on the negative. And this is very common when you're experiencing burnout. Jumping to conclusions. Do we have any mind readers in the room? In other words, you've sent a message to a colleague, they haven't written you back or they haven't responded, and are jumping to conclusion, our mind reading slants to the negative. They don't care. They're mad at me. Versus they're swamped, they're overwhelmed. I'm a very poor mind reader and I tend to get it wrong. And so when I realize that I'm mind reading, we need to check the facts out, okay? And then the last thing before we talk about how do you correct these thoughts, because that's what we're here for, is maybe this fallacy thinking. Thinking that if something else changes, then I'll be better for it. That's called the fallacy of change, that if others change, I'm going to be better and I'll be happier. Well, that's a fallacy. What we know is that in order for us to be happy, in order for change to really make a difference, the change has to be in us. So what can you do? How do you correct these thinking distortions? First, you identify the distortion. Okay, it takes a little bit of time. How are you thinking? What's coming up for you regularly? Are you mind reading? Are you forgetting the positives? Where are you in your kind of non-constructive thinking patterns? And then I want you to examine the evidence. In CBT, we call putting this thought on trial. So in other words, if the thought that I'm having is, I am so ineffective in my work right now, then I'm going to take that thought and I'm going to put it on trial. And I'm going to come up with as much evidence for or against that thought before I allow that thought to hold truth in my headspace. And most of the time, what I come to find out is that's not true. And sometimes I'll have to bring witnesses into it. I'll have to ask colleagues, I'll have to ask students, how am I doing? I'll do an evaluation, I'll ask for feedback. It lets me know whether or not my distortion is correct. Okay, you can use the double standard technique, which is, how would you advise somebody else if they were saying that to you? Would you talk to your friend that way? Would you talk to your colleague that way? Probably not. So challenge the thought based on the double standard of what would you tell somebody that you cared for, and demonstrate that same care for yourself when you're having these cognitive distortions. Okay. Lastly, is it opinion or is it fact? In other words, is this thought I'm having truth or is it just an opinion? And opinions change. I'm having a bad day. That is probably a fact. I am so not effective in my work. That may be an opinion based on the fact that I have too many deadlines and I haven't caught up with it yet. David, can you go to that next slide on ants? Automatic negative thought, not the ants that creepy crawl all around us when we're trying to have a nice picnic. Ants, automatic negative thoughts. And there's an example here just to get you in the mindset of stopping, identifying the negative thought, and then applying these practices to it. If you can stop that negative thinking that's going on in your head, you can engage in movement and you can support your interpersonal space, you have a much better chance of being able to reverse the effects of burnout and to create resiliency around it.
Beautiful. Lovely. Isn't she amazing, everyone? I know. Okay. So burnout, recruitment, and all that goes with it. We had a lot of great questions and comments in the question and answer. One person said, what do you do if your principal is an energy zapper? Run away, just run. I'm just kidding. You can't always do that. But if you can, I mean, obviously run away. 10 minutes of walking, 5 minutes of running. I personally always try to find the humor in anything that makes me feel better, makes people around me feel better. We know we are zoomed out, our students are zoomed out. There have been way too many times when I've just hit mute and we're like, and I'm watching The Real Housewives in the background or Grey's Anatomy for the 100th time. It doesn't matter. It's okay. Acknowledging it is part of the solution. So this is something I came up with, certified fresh. So you have to keep in mind, particularly when you're dealing with people that are burnt out or when you're burnt out. How are you feeling and how are they feeling? Is whatever you're doing with them, if you're giving an information session or if they have to watch, get another college talk to them and they've been in the classroom the whole day or they've been at home the entire day on the computer, but they're still at home and their mom's in the kitchen, like there's a lot of distractions. So is what you're presenting them or what they're hearing making them feel good, bad? Are they having any feelings about it or are they just bored? Usually if I'm in a meeting or if I'm watching a presentation and I'm bored, that means the students are probably bored. So I try to make them as least boring as possible. If that means standing up, moving around, putting your dog on camera, because everyone loves to see a dog on camera, things like that. How are people receiving it and how are you receiving the information? Is this your 100th phone call of the day? Are you so frustrated because it's the same question every time? Maybe take a second, take a deep breath and be like, okay, I know I'm receiving this negatively, but that may not be how the person is presenting it. So you have to change that way of thinking. Always try to be engaging. Are you engaged? Are they engaged? And we're going to talk about some tips on how to help with that. And some of them are ridiculous, and that's okay. Same thing with stimulating. You need to stimulate people. This entire time I've been holding a rock or a button that I found on my desk. I have no idea what it's for. I'm pretty sure one of my pants does not have a button now, but that's okay. It's quarantine. We don't fit in our pants anymore. And then obviously humoring. You need to have humor with whatever you're doing. Laughter brings light to every situation. And yes, we're talking about serious subjects, about going to college and your future career, but you still have to have fun with it. If you're too stressed out, you're not going to enjoy the process, and going to college and being in school should be enjoyable. You're there for 8 hours a day. I mean, please. If I'm bored for 8 hours a day, that's it. I'm going to sleep. So here are some tips and tricks that I've done or that I've experienced that I've seen. We would love to hear in the Q&A of some other tricks that maybe you have done or things you may want to experiment with. I personally have no shame. I will try anything on camera. I once showed up in a tracksuit and I was like, guys, I haven't showered for 3 days. Let me talk to you about FIU. And they laughed, and that's fine. Or I was like, I know you don't want to take the SAT. We're like the only school that requires it. I'm sorry, you want to come here, that's what you got to do. You don't want to come here, that's okay. So something that I've seen work, scavenger hunts. So especially if you're at home or even if you're in the classroom all day, and it may not even be, you may only be with the students for 10 minutes, 30 minutes. Okay, if I'm giving a presentation on my school, find something that's blue. Find something that starts with the letter C. And the person who brings it back first, and then you vote on who has the best item. We did it once for a baby shower, because apparently Zoom baby showers are a thing now, and someone was like, find something with the letter C. I had a cup in my hand, and I was like, I have nothing that starts with the letter C. I was freaking out. A cup. I obviously lost that round. Or it was like, find ice cream. So I sat there on camera and just started eating ice cream. That's okay. We have some people, you're on Zoom, you're in a background. Okay, what room am I in my house now? Or what's changed in my background? You've got to try and have fun. Of course, we have things like Kahoot. So they're going to be surveys or interactive things where the students are able to actually use the phones they're probably on under the screen anyways. So you might as well use them to your benefit. There's another one and I could not find the name of it, but I will find out for you guys. It is a game. So it's like an internet game where you participate through your phone. So you can put in different text and guessing games and all that stuff. Anything to stop the monotony of the everyday. Just like you would probably do if you were sitting in the classroom, you want to do that same thing online. If you're giving a presentation to students, and you can tell they're not paying attention, I personally can feel their entire body's eye roll when someone goes, please turn on your cameras, guys. They care if they see you. Yes, of course, we can tell and we feel better if we can see you. But also, I haven't showered in a week. I look like crap. So please don't make me turn on my camera. I haven't washed my face. So I get that. So other ways that you can combat that is, okay, we're going to talk about something throughout this presentation. I'm not going to tell you what it is. At the end, I'm going to ask you a trivia question. The person who gets that right will get a giveaway and you can mail it to their house. That's the great thing about the US Postal Service. It's struggling, so let's support it. What I've done, especially because campus was closed for so long, but I was on campus, I did an alternative tour. So they're used to an information session. You watch the slides, oh my God, cool. People don't care. So I said, okay, guys, I'm in the office. I'm gonna put on my mask. I'm gonna take you on my phone and we're gonna walk around campus. I'm not a tour guide. It's been 10 years since I've gone to this school, but we're gonna go on a tour. We're gonna see how it goes. This is a building. I used to eat lunch there. That was where my friend lived. That couch is super comfortable. Keep it silly, but obviously still give them the information. You can obviously have trivia games and things like that. And then what people are really craving during these times is personalized one-on-one events. So if you're able to do office hours, if they do come on campus and you know you can't meet with them, okay, maybe find a bench where you guys can sit far apart, but still so they can see who you are, acknowledge your presence. And then if you see your numbers might be down in a school, your kids are feeling drained, try and do a personalized event for them. Yes, it's more work on the front end, but it'll be more rewarding on the back end. They feel like it's different. They're the only ones that may have seen this event in that way. And it really does benefit them in the future. Does anybody have any other tips or tricks before we end? Because we're almost done.
I noticed somebody put dancing, get up and dance.
Yes. Okay, can recess be a homework assignment? Yes, if you're the teacher, you can make anything a homework assignment. When you guys were talking about sitting in your chair all day, all I could think of was putting on Beyonce's Partition and pretending I was her in the music video, which is super awkward if my coworker walks in, but it's also very fun. Something that we do in my office, which may not be possible in every office, but we have Nerf guns and they are technically COVID safe. So you don't have to be near each other, and we will just walk into the hallway and just start shooting at each other with Nerf guns because obviously you got to be safe. Or laser tag, or throwing notes at each other. Anything that you think is childish will probably work the best. And it really helps you to break up the day, get you moving, and have fun. If you know that it's your 5th meeting of the day, take those 5 minutes to talk about the thing you hated most about the day and the thing you loved the most. I was on a meeting once and I saw a cat walking by and I said, oh my God, everyone, look at this cat. And we followed the cat for like half an hour. It was a very productive meeting. So things like that. Does anybody have any questions, comments, concerns?
I'm noticing that motivation has been experienced not only by those of us on this call, lack of motivation, but also for the students that you're serving. And this is very much a parallel process. If you're feeling it, your students are feeling it, like David said. So imagine some of these techniques, offering some of the techniques to the students as well, letting them, sometimes I'll even just have a student, if I know a student's really overwhelmed, I'll have them look around my office and say, name 3 things that you see, because I need them to be grounded, because they're stressed, they're overwhelmed, they can't concentrate. They'll name 3 things. And then all of a sudden now we can talk. And just bringing them and grounding students is so important. That's the only way that they're going to be able to enter into real conversation with you. So put some fun things in your office or in your background so that students can identify it. It's a great way to open up a meeting with the student and kind of disarm them a little bit, because you're right, they're unmotivated and they're just as burnt out.
Correct. I think some other great tricks just for yourself that I've experienced. I'm a very spiritual person, but one of the things that really helps is visualizing. So if you see that you're having these negative thoughts, or your students are having these negative thoughts, or that one coworker who always complains continues to complain and it's not helping your burnout, picture it in your head like you're pulling it out of your body like it's black tar. And you pull it out, and you can even use your hands, and then picture yourself putting something positive back in. So reverse that thought. Don't use the word, I will not be sad at work, but I will be productive, or I will be positive about work for today, or I will think of 3 positive things today, and then put that inside of you. And that just psychologically helps your brain to process getting rid of a bad thought and putting in a positive one and replacing it. And it really helps if you visualize it, you want to make it colorful, you want to make it anything else, you can do that. And I think we had one question. How do you combat fallacy thinking as a school counselor? That's a great question. So there are many different ways to do that. But it really is how it feels best for you. So we're all going through very similar things. I personally love to acknowledge it. Every email is, hi, how are you? I know this email is not finding you well, but that's okay. We're still here. And that's fine. It's acknowledging it and then moving past it to get whatever you need to get done.
David, I wish we had more time.
I
can't
know.
believe it's gone so quickly. We should have a part 2. I feel like we just got started.
Correct. But thank you all so much for attending today. We really appreciated all the time you spent with us, all the questions you asked. As always, you can always feel free to reach out to us and give us any feedback you need, or if you need any advice or tips or resources, we have that. I really wanted to include Vicki Gray because one, she taught me everything I know about social work, but anytime I was in her class, she really helped me feel grounded and really made everything feel like it wasn't impossible. And that's what I hope you have all felt here. And thank you all so much for attending.
Thank you all.